Hey buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Hearthstone is the game, and this is my budget mid-range shaman deck for Whispers of the Old Gods. This deck was designed specifically for new or returning players who might be coming back to Hearthstone or starting Hearthstone for the very first time with the Whispers of the Old Gods expansion, but are on a very strict budget when it comes to arcane dust, but still want to build a somewhat competitive deck that they can take out onto the ranked ladder and find success. So this deck was built specifically with a 600 arcane dust limit. That is a very tight budget to assemble a competitive deck. So it does not include cards like rares. It's almost all commons and free cards. So very affordable to build, but still relatively competitive when you get it out on the ranked ladder. Capable, of course, of reaching ranks like 15 and perhaps even 10 with some patience and dedication to the deck and a few upgrades here and there. So without further delay, I want to go ahead and take a look at the deck, and I want to quickly go card by card just to describe what each of the cards is designed to do. Well, I guess first I should describe the overall game plan for the deck. This is a mid-range deck, which means it really starts to thrive around the middle turns like 4, 5, and 6, and doesn't have a ton of late game options, but has a few kind of heavy hitting cards. So you want to get out to a solid start to capitalize your board in the mid game with very powerful minions that do neat and strategically important things in the mid game, and then finish that off with some minions that you can leverage in the late game thanks to the momentum and the minions and the board that you've built up so far. So you'll see the mana curve here, very smooth. Now, I did not design this with that mana curve in mind necessarily. It just makes sense when you start to piece together all the cards that you'll need. So a little heavy towards the beginning just to make sure you get a good start, and some real powerful stuff around turns 4 and 5. So the win condition on this deck really is no big combo. It's not rushing down your opponent with tons of little minions. It's really more about generating value, ending up in a game state towards turns 5 through 8 where you have a really big board and you're able to start punching through for damage and essentially just overwhelm them with continued pressure and board presence. So this deck's very good at doing that, and Shaman as a class as well is quite good at getting stuff out onto the board and leveraging it. So let's talk about each of these cards and what they do and how they fit that game plan. So Lightning Bolt is the first card. This is a straight up deal 3 damage card for 1 mana with a single overload. This is sometimes good for face damage if you're just looking to hit them for an extra 3 damage to win the game, but typically you want to use it for removal in the early game to take care of minions that cost more than 1 mana, so you gain a mana efficiency, a tempo advantage over your opponents. Rockbiter weapon is very similar. You can use it on both your face and minions to trade up from like a totem into a really scary minion that has 3 health, so you don't have to take the damage yourself. But sometimes you'll want to preserve a minion and take the damage with your face instead. But Rockbiter typically will be used as a clearing spell in this deck, although occasionally, of course, you can land that hand where you have double Rockbiter, double Lightning Bolt, and suddenly you've got 12 damage that can just hit the enemy's face and win the game. Acidic Swamp Ooze is a nice free minion. It comes with a basic set. It's a decent 2 mana play just because it's got a body and it can attack, but the battle cry is where the real value comes from. It completely destroys an opponent's weapon, so a class like a warrior who gets a Fiery War Axe out early against this deck can be very dangerous just because it allows them to kill multiple minions with a single card, so it's hard to get up on the board. So sometimes Acidic Swamp Ooze will hit your hand at exactly the right moment just to counter those kinds of plays. So just destroying those weapons before they get out of control. Bilefin Tidehunter is the first new Whispers of the Old Gods card included in this list. And it might seem unusual because it's just a Murloc card. It doesn't seem to fit. This deck's not about Murlocs. But that's not what makes Bilefin Tidehunter good. What's good about it is that it summons multiple minions, which this deck loves when there are multiple minions on the board. And one of them actually has Taunt as well, so that can sometimes disrupt your opponent's plans and protect higher value minions like a Flame Tongue Totem, for instance, from dying as easily. So just helps you load up the board with stuff. And when you load up the board with stuff, cards like Flame Tongue Totem suddenly look much, much better. Adjacent minions have +2 attack, so your Flame Tongue Totems essentially allow you to either do lots of damage to the opponent's face or set up your minions to make really nice, efficient trades so that, for instance, your Bilefin Tidehunter can trade into something with 4 health, even though it's only half a card. Moving on to Novice Engineer. This is really not the perfect card for this deck necessarily, but the deck does lack card draw to an extent, so if you don't get a perfectly smooth curve and win the game, you can start to run out of resources. And Novice Engineer is the cheapest instant card draw card in the game. So sneaking one in basically means on turn 8, if you need a card, you can drop your Novice Engineer and still have 6 mana to play the Fire Elemental or the Psychotron or whatever else you draw into. So it just helps you cycle cards, essentially. You don't care about the 1/1 body necessarily, although sometimes your opponent will ignore the 1/1 and leave it, which plays nicely with Flame Tongue Totem and a few other minion synergy cards. Totem Golem is a great 2 mana play just because it's a huge body that helps you get onto the board, and although there is a slight overload punishing element, you have other 2-drops you can play after you play your Totem Golem, so your turn 3 is usually not punished too hard by playing this, and it's certainly worth it most of the time just because it's so downright good in the early game. Hex is really just the best hard removal spell in the game. It takes care of any minion that might be causing you problems, and it does it for 3 mana, which means you can kill a Tyrian Forge Ring for 3 mana, leaving yourself with a 5 mana advantage over your opponent. Mid-range decks don't typically need to control the board totally with tons of removal or AoE spells, but sometimes having 1 or 2 targeted hard removal options like this can help you get through annoying taunts or really scary minions that would otherwise swing the game in your opponent's favor. Tusks Totemic is yet another minion that just helps you load up your board very efficiently. It's kind of the upgraded Bilefin Tidehunter in a way. The totems you get can also be very good sometimes, like a Flame Tongue Totem or a Mana Tide Totem or even a Totem Golem. In those instances, this card will put you in a huge advantage early. But even if you just get a standard Hero Power Totem, it's still good value for 3 mana because you get multiple minions onto the board. Unbound Elemental. This is just another solid minion that tends to stay alive because it has a high health total. And we have a lot of overload cards in this deck that synergize here. So not only do we have 4 mana overload cards like Flame Wreath Faceless that will buff your Unbound Elemental the turn immediately afterwards, we also have cards like Totem Golem or Lightning Bolt that can also add in occasionally. Now, admittedly, there aren't a ton of overload cards. This is not like an overload deck, but there are enough that occasionally this will become the 3/5, the 4/6, and you get super value there. And even if it's not, it's hard to find really, really good 3-drops that are this cheap to include in a deck, and we did need another 3-drop just to keep that curve pretty smooth. So Unbound Elemental is really the top choice here anyway. At 4 mana, it's another new Whispers of the Old Gods card, the Flame Wreath Faceless. As you can see, this is a 4 mana 7/7, which means it's just a huge body that's very annoying for people to deal with. They can give you a big advantage in the mid-game. It can either hit the face a couple times for huge damage or trade into multiple minions in the 4 to 5 to 6 mana range. So there's a lot of potential value here. The overload is somewhat punishing, but we do have some good 3 or 2 mana follow-ups and ways to work around it with some 1-drops as well. So usually it works out just fine because this gives you a significant enough advantage. Novice Inventor is another just card draw cycle style card that's a little understated as far as its cost efficiency is concerned. So a 2/4 for 4 is bad. But a 2/4 for 4 still works well with Flame Tongue. It tends to stick around because opponents disregard it as only a 2-attack minion, so they may not value killing it all that highly, which means you're good with your Flame Tongue Totems, you're good with your Stormwind Champions, and you're good with your Frostwolf Warlords because you're likely to have an extra minion laying around. Infested Torrent is very similar in that regard. The Taunt can sometimes be nice. This card in general, by the way, I think is a little bit below average as far as card quality is concerned, but this deck needed a little bit of a death rattle, a little stickiness leading into the Frostwolf Warlord and Stormwind Champion turns, and Infested Torrent does tend to allow that. So the 2/2 slime that's left over can actually do a lot of work. So this is, in a dream world, this would be a piloted Shredder, but that was lost in standard format. So this is kind of the subpar replacement that still does synergize with the deck pretty nicely. Frostwolf Warlord's a nice classic card. I think it's a little underrated. It often, for 5 mana, will become a 6/6 or a 7/7 in Shaman. So another big scary minion, much like Flame Breathe Faceless, that can get lots of value. This deck does tend to end up with multiple minions on the board, so rarely will you feel like playing. Rarely will you play this as a 4/4 and feel like you wasted some mana. Usually there's at least a 5/5, which is good, and a 6/6 you can get out of this. Psychotron is another fun new Whispers of the Old Gods card. And what's so good about this one in this deck is that it's very sticky. It's hard to deal with. It's annoying. It's the big brother of the Annoyotron, in fact. So it works really well with cards that benefit from having minions on the board, like the Frostwolf Warlord or the Stormwind Champion. But it also works well with cards like Rockbiter Weapon, because you can essentially cast your Rockbiter on your Psychotron. Then it's a 6-attack minion with Divine Shield, which means it can trade into something really big with 6 health and still stick around as a 3/4. It doesn't hurt itself because that Divine Shield protects it. Same thing with Flametongue Totem. It can attack for 5 without killing itself. So there are some kind of ancillary benefits to Psychotron's Divine Shield. Plus, just having a big taunt in these kinds of decks, I shouldn't say a big taunt, but an annoying taunt, in these kinds of decks can do a lot of work to protect your Flametongue, to protect your Stormwind, so don't undervalue what Psychotron can provide. Plus, he's just a fun new Whispers of the Old Gods card. Fire Elemental is a great 6-drop, one of the best in the game. A solid body attached to a really strong battle cry that helps you clear up the board, or sometimes just hit the enemy's face for lethal. So nice flexibility there. And then finally, Stormwind Champion, just one last big heavy minion that synergizes well with a full board full of stuff. Probably an underrated minion in general, I think. Pretty cool card for being a free basic card, and actually fits into this deck pretty well. So there you have it. That's the list for the budget mid-range Shaman. Now, I actually have put together an upgraded version of this deck. So I often get requests for upgrades. The full budget version was 600 or less dust. This version, on the other hand, doubles that dust limit to 1200. So this is what I would call maybe an intermediate upgraded budget deck. So as you start to accrue cards and if you like the budget mid-range Shaman, you want to upgrade it, this is something you could build towards. Now, I will say this is not a finalized version of the deck. There is still tiers above this that are even better, and top-tier competitive mid-range Shaman style decks. So this is not necessarily an end point, and some of the cards you craft here may not necessarily be at that end point either, but I will say that the cards in this deck are all good cards, so you shouldn't feel like you're wasting dust if you do move towards this upgrade. There are no epics in this deck, only rare quality cards. So cards like Thing from Below, Azure Drake, Master of Evolution, a Lightning Storm, and I guess that's it as far as the actual rares go. I think there may be a couple extra commons as well, but these cards are basically more powerful mid-range minions. So Thing from Below can just be a really great tempo play. Azure Drake is more card draw that's still a good body and a powerful spell damage effect. Master of Evolution is great with minions on the board, so on and so forth. So Lightning Storm gives you some AoE removal. Sometimes it's just helpful in mid-range. So this is the next version that you should aim towards, in a sense. This version of the deck is substantially better, but of course both are still designed to be solid decks in their own right. So that said, I do want to play the budget mid-range Shaman for at least a couple games. So let's take it out onto the ranked ladder to discuss essentially mulligans and play style. And this is a standard deck, of course, so we'll play in standard format. Now keep in mind, this deck is not necessarily designed to be played this deep into the ladder, so we may struggle a little bit against well-refined decks, but this is pretty late in the season, so Might stretch the deck's limits to an extent, and also I will say that this is still pretty early in the Whispers of the Old Gods metagame, so we don't really know what we're going to encounter as far as what's going to be the best decks out there and what to expect. So playing is still quite difficult, I guess I'll say. As far as the mulligan there was concerned, the Unbound is a fine keep, just because we have the coin and a few different 3-drops, especially now, so we can coin out one 3-drop, follow it up with another one as well if needed. So in other words, I didn't want to go without a 2-drop unless I had to, so this was a good way to get this out early and perhaps scare my opponent a little. My guess is that this will be a Death Rattle Rogue, but we don't know. I'm going to go ahead and coin this out. We don't have like an overload follow-up to make it super valuable, but he might think we do, so he might really expand some resources to make sure this doesn't get out of hand. So we're almost like tricking him in a sense to kill something that's really not that good. But he had a pretty clean way to do it, so it actually didn't hurt. I was going to say next is that we can actually still play a 2-drop and Rockbiter if we have to. So I'm going to Totem Golem here instead of Bilefin, and the reason for that is that these are 1 health minions, so his weapon does a lot of work, but he just used a Backstab SI to kill a 4 health minion, so I have a feeling he's going to have trouble killing another 4 health minion. But I'm wrong, he has another way. He handled it just fine. So we'll go ahead and play our Tuskar. It probably wouldn't be so crazy to Lightning Bolt Bilefin, but I think it's okay. A good totem here could really be a big deal. That's a good one. We need card draw, so that's important. He's also going to feel compelled to kill it, which means our Tuskar might actually survive. Wow, that's a pretty weak turn from him, actually. That's a pretty weak turn. I think I'll go ahead and Gnomish here, and I'm likely going to Lightning Bolt this down to keep this alive. Alright, so we're in a good spot here. We have 2 hexes for removal of big, scary stuff, which I think there's going to be like a Sylvanas, a Cairn, yeah. This is a hardcore Death Rattle Rogue. But thankfully we've got some answers. That might come next turn, but I have to hex this. It's just too good. I was debating whether it would be more valuable to hit his face and leave the frog alive, but since it was a taunt, it could eventually like block our Flame Wreath faceless or something if he had a way to kill everything. So it seemed riskier. I think it was just smarter to kill it while I had a chance. Oh wow, he got that off of his Huckster. That's cool. That was a good fit. If I play my Flame Wreath, it's going to overload me 2, which means next turn I'll have 6 mana. So I could still play the Fire Elemental. So I think the Flame Wreath into a Hero Power is the best option here. I put it on the left so that I could perhaps Flame Tongue in between these 2 guys. This will probably die to a Hero Power, so it's somewhat irrelevant, but just in case, I wanted to be able to Flame Tongue away from this on 2 minions. Oh, he sapped it. Okay. It's not bad. So I'll probably just Fire Elemental this Zeril here. No shenanigans necessary. Actually, I need to put that on the left. Typically, you'll want to stack your totems together on one side of the board, and they always spawn on the right, so it's much smarter to put them on the right than on the left. So minions should go on the left, in other words. Another Eviscerate, man. He's running out of removal, though. He's used Saps, Eviscerates, he's used a lot of stuff. So we can actually just follow up with another Fire Elemental here. Probably Hero Power. I believe he still has one poisoned card, so 5 real cards. A toxin card, I should say. Oh, wow! Oh my gosh, the Doomhammer and Rogue. That is some brutal stuff. He doesn't have another Abyss, so he's just setting up, yeah. Man. The Doomhammer and Abyss. This is actually a pretty neat combo. For 7 mana, I could Hero Power, set up the Frostwolf next turn. I could also just Frostwolf this turn. Make it a 6/6. I'd have a 6/4, a 6/6, and a 7/7. He'll be at 15 health after this turn. I think I'm going to do that. The Unbound is probably a slightly more efficient and smarter play, but this potentially just wins me the game right now outright. I mean, he can kill this, but he has to take so much face damage. He's already used 2 of this. He might have another sap, but even sapping any of these... Okay, I'll play him again, right? We have a Hex for a big threat. Flame Tongue for 4 extra damage. I think we probably just win here. I was pretty light on... yeah, well played. I was pretty harsh on Flame Wreath Faceless. I didn't think it was going to be that good. I'm very wrong. It's very amazing. It is a fantastic card. I thought it would be merely average, but it's actually great. So let's play at least one more here, just to make sure we get a full look at this deck. To some extent, I think it plays itself, so I don't think it needs all that much of a tutorial. You kind of just play your minions and always consider your overload, of course. That's a big catching point if you're not careful. I may actually keep the Hex just for his... I mean, I think this is probably going to be a Shaman that runs a Flame Wreathed Faceless, and I may have trouble killing it if I don't. But we have coin, so if we play this on 2, we could theoretically coin this out on 3. We could also coin this out on 1, Hero Power, and play this on 3. So a couple different options here. Yeah, we'll probably... we'll probably coin... No, we can't coin this out on 1 and Hero Power, so we have to make a choice here. I think I want to race. I'm not that worried about like Lightning Storm. I think I want to just get minions out and go for it. So I'm going to play this. We'll probably Hero Power on turn 3 because we'll be overloaded 1. It's kind of good. Usually that doesn't get to kill anything, but here it is. That's kind of good. I could have gone face, but there's like a chance, you know, he has an Earth Shock or something annoying, and he's able to kill 2 things instead of 1. All right, we'll just we'll trade here. Keeping stuff on the board against Shaman is somewhat risky, and we're still keeping minions out. We have a good turn 4, probably with a Tuskar instead of the Gnomish. Yep, I called it. This is exactly why I kept the Hex. It's exactly why we kept the Hex. And I think it's certainly worth it, because now he's on 3 mana, and we still have a good board. We can even probably Frostwolf next turn. Oh wow, that's actually an amazing play, like just ridiculously amazing play. Shoot, so good. That is tough. This is a great card. Cleared that overload and dropped a body. Oh, that made my turn so much harder. I think I'll definitely end up rock biting something down. So in that case, maybe I play the 4-drop. I could also Flame Tongue, Hero Power to set up for the Frostwolf next turn. But that's off mana. I think I'd rather play the Fire Elemental next turn. I don't need a card yet, so I'm not going to. So he's got a good trade there, but that leaves me with 3 minions on the board. They're not particularly powerful ones, but with a Flame Tongue, everything gets a little more powerful. It's pretty good. I don't have a way to kill this now, really. At least, oh, actually, I do thanks to that. I have a couple ways. I can Flame Tongue, Lightning Bolt, but I can't Gnomish if I do that. I could also just Flame Tongue, Gnomish. Perhaps that's better. In that case, let's Gnomish first. Another Flame Tongue. We'll use the top decked one just in case it frustrates him a little bit. Mind games. Remember, we want the Flame Tongue to be on the right of the Novice Inventor so that totems, when they spawn, will be activated naturally by the Flame Tongue. That's not that awesome of a play. That's a little better. Oh, that's good. Yikesers. I think I may just, yeah, I think we'll just Flame Tongue, trade, Frostwolf. We could Hex, but I think he's going to have more big stuff, and we have a way to kill it, so why not just kill it, right? And we'll get a good Frostwolf. And this will get to attack, too. So this is actually a pretty scary board. It's 11, 13 damage plus 3 in hand. That's not a great play. At least not at this point. It's a good play, but... Oh, wow. He got punished a little there. Not much, but a little. Did he just inadvertently give me lethal in any way? 9 plus 2 is 11, plus 2 is 13, 16, 19. Oh, yeah, well played. He's thinking the same thing. He gave up. I didn't actually have lethal, but I'll tell you what I was going to do. I was going to play the Fire Elemental, hit the face, play Lightning Bolt, hit the face, put him at 3, and just have my giant board of minions. Because he's top decking, right? He had no cards left in hand. So there was almost no way he was going to draw enough resources to win the game or to kill my entire board. So I think just going all in would have been more than enough. All right, so far my budget mid-range Shaman is totally kicking butt, right? It's, as you can see, a very strong deck. So hopefully you got some insights into how to play it. I'm not going to beat you over the head too much, but here's one last look at the deck list. It will also be posted in the description below, so be sure to check that out. If you have any comments about this deck or questions or thoughts, I'd love it if you left them in the comments. I always appreciate that. So also, if you have any specific questions about upgrades for cards that you have but don't necessarily fit into my upgraded list, feel free to ask. This is a template, but I know not everybody's collection is the same, so I'm happy to make specific recommendations as well. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.